Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today I will be telling you one tip for every brawler, which is a total of 43 tips in one video. I'll be starting out with my strongest tips for my best brawlers, then later on I'll be going to my worst brawlers. Now we're going to start out with Frank because he's my highest. Now my biggest tip for Frank would be play a mode where you can actually hit people. Don't go to a map that's super long range because you're not going to be able to do a whole lot. But you want to go to maps that you can actually hit the enemies consistently, and you can stun them without them just running away from you. My biggest tip for Colt would be to shoot enemies in a way that you start out where they're walking, then you start walking the opposite direction. So that way you guaranteed hit more bullets. Now that really helped me get rank 30 Colt. Now my biggest tip for Spike would probably be play a mode like Heist or Siege where you can get a lot of damage in fast. I would just try to play a mode where you can really more guaranteed to get those shots because they're high damage shots. So I would try to play those. Spike is also great for community heist maps. Now B, I know a lot about B because I'm actually the B main. Now my tip for B would be play solo showdown with Honeycoat, but the main tip is actually don't be afraid to waste your ammo, because with solo showdown you really want to check all of the bushes, and I know that your supercharged shot does almost triple the damage, but I actually just use it like normally. Don't just save it up for the whole match because it will make you lose. And my biggest tip for Terra would be either play Brawl or wait for a map with a ton of bushes in it, because that is where Terra will do very strongly, and I actually very recently pushed my Terra in a bush map. And my biggest tip for Edgar would be use that super against brawlers that you know you can beat, like Dynamite or Barley, but don't jump people like Shelly or B, because they can both beat you in a 1v1. Now without Primo, he's a bit harder to push. I like to push him on community maps because I find it's easier to push him with. But as for the tip, I think you just need good teammates because I don't find him that great. I do find him okay for Heist and Brawl, but I would not really play him in solo showdown unless you do a lot of teaming. Then he's good for solo showdown. Now Jackie's a bit of a tougher one. I would play her just about only Brawl, and my biggest tip for her would be don't hold on to the gadget too long, because that gadget can often get you a goal even when you don't see it. Now, when I have Jackie teammates that just have two gadgets at the end of the match because they're so scared to use it, it really hurts the team, and then Jackie becomes so much worse. Because one of Jackie's best abilities is her extra speed with that. The mode that I would play Tick in is either Bounty or Siege, and my biggest tip would be try to hide behind a wall and then block where the enemies want to go. So don't actually try to throw your shot on top of them, but shoot it where you can stop them from going, so that way your teammates can collect either all the bolts or just really push them back and then beat them. Now my biggest tip for Rico. Rico's a harder one, but I would be pushing him in Gem Grab personally, because I don't find him very good for solo showdown, but he is pretty good for a few heist maps, but only if you get the right heist map. And my biggest tip for him would be try to get to a position where you can ricochet your shots without being hit. So that way you can hit the enemy, but he can't hit you. And that's what I always like to do with Rico. I would play Amber in either solo showdown or maybe Bounty. I just do solo showdown. But my biggest tip for her would be, especially in solo showdown, you want to get a big puddle section, so that way you can keep on getting your supers, and then you can really infect the whole map with oil, and whenever you want, you can just damage everybody by so much. And you can, if you run back in your oil, people can't really chase you without dying. Now my biggest tip for 8-bit would be play Heist. I find he's so strong for Heist, especially with his new gadget that lets him shoot for 3 times as long, and his recent buff, which makes him so strong in Heist. First, player in Gem Grab, And second, you really want to make a connection between all the bushes, so that way you have a huge area where you can just sneak up on it, and the enemies constantly have to like check the bush, and then you have no idea if you're in there, and then it really makes them not focus on your teammates as much, and if they focus on your teammates too much, you can just jump out at the bush and beat them. He's more of a round brawler. Like, I play him in solo showdown, brawl ball, heist, bounty, gem grab. I find him, at least for me, very rounded that way. But I would use stun star power. You really want to try to stun people against walls, and then shoot them 3 times and stun them again, because that'll be just about everybody in the game. I would play Surge in solo showdown. My biggest tip for him would be use your gadget to get around walls, and then quickly beat enemies before they see it coming. And if the enemy has about 6,000 health, shoot them 3 times and then use your super on top of them, because that will beat them. And then you also get a power up. I would play Bo in duo showdown or bounty, and I would my biggest tip would be place his mines where the enemies keep on coming. Like, if you see that they always take a certain path to you guys, place them somewhere in that path where they don't quite see it right away, but then when they walk over it, they're just like, wait a second, we just lost because of these mines. And I would play Nita in either Hot Zone or Heist, and I would actually, for Heist, I would use Hyper Bear, but for other modes, I would use Bear With Me, especially with its latest buff. It's really strong for certain modes, especially Hot Zone. And with that extra bear, you can constantly cycle with your bear. Like, you take some damage, then your bear takes some damage, then you just keep on getting that heal off of each other. It's especially good if the enemies are close range brawlers. I would play Byron in either duo showdown or bounty. Now, he is pretty well rounded for every single mode because of his ability to heal your teammates and deal damage to the enemies. But my biggest tip for him would be try to line up your shots, especially like if you have injection. If you don't have injection, you really want to shoot your super to where you can hit your teammate and an enemy, which will heal and get you closer to your super in the same one, which is so strong. Now, my biggest tip for Colette would be try to use your super where you can hit 2 enemies, because that'll charge your super again. Guaranteed if you have the push it star power, which I prefer. And that really makes you stronger because you can just cycle your supers, which will defeat the enemies so quickly. And my biggest tip for Jean would be make sure you hit your pulls, because once you get a pull in, you will often almost get your pull back just from that one pull. So you can kind of cycle your pulls, and I would play him in Gem Grab or maybe Duo Showdown. But I would use the Magic Puff Star Power, because I find that one way better. I would be pushing him in Solo Showdown or Brawl Ball, especially with his ability to shoot the ball and then dash after it and then shoot it again at the net. He's really fun for trick shots as well. And my biggest tip for him would be use your super quite frequently, but make sure that you use it when you're max health. Like, don't use it when you're about to die, because you're just going to die right away when you use it. And try to end your super on top of the enemy, so that way the second your super's over, the enemy's kind of stunned from you hitting them, then you can do a lot of damage fast. Now, I would play Sprout in Siege, maybe a little bit of Bounty. Honestly, either Star Power or Gadget they're all good and pretty equal. And I would really try to block that Siege bot from hitting your safe, and you can nicely shoot over walls and bounce it around corners to hit the enemy. Now, my biggest tip for Max would be don't hold on to your ammo very long. Like, I often just use up all my ammo non-stop at the enemy just to apply that pressure, and I use running gun to really help with that. But I would just always have my shots constantly going at them, so that way they can never really come at you. And I would typically do this in Solo Showdown, although since Edgar's release, she has been a lot worse, so you can also play her for modes like Brawl Ball or maybe a little bit of Gem Grab. Now, Bowl is another one that I haven't pushed in a long time. I would play him for Heist, and maybe a bit of solo showdown. But I love solo showdown, so that's why I always say that. And I would use tough guy, and then maybe berserker if you're in a good heist map for that specific one. And then I like heal better, but stomper isn't that bad either. I find his star powers and gadgets pretty equal as well, especially with the latest buff to his berserker. I find Mr. P best in Siege, but he's also pretty good for solo showdown as long as you don't go near Edgar's, because Edgar can jump you and beat you pretty easily. So I would be playing him in Siege, and my biggest tip for him would be place your porter somewhere where it's closest to the enemy base, but they can't shoot it from their base. So that way you will always have a porter bugging them, and use your gadget when your porter's low health. I would play Sandy in Brawl Ball, and that's just about the only mode I like to play Sandy in. Sandy does work in other modes, but I just find him so strong in Brawl Ball with the ability to hide your teammates and then quickly get a team kill and then score that ball. And my biggest tip for him would be use your super and then line up 2 enemies, so that way you can get your super from the 3 ammo that you have charged up, because you can shoot both enemies, and then you can get your super again, and you can just really get that cycle going. I don't like to use Sandy's gadget too much, because it will often result in you dying. I would play Carl for solo showdown, community maps, or Brawl Ball, and my biggest tip for him would just be always have a shot out. I don't normally hold on to that ammo, because it will often make the enemies more scared of you, and it will deal a lot more damage if you just always have 1 ammo out. Make sure that you're getting the center of your shots on the enemies, because it actually deals double the damage of your, the side of your shots. So picture your shot as Colt. Don't think of it as kind of a Poco widespread, but think of it as just a straight line like Colt, because that's how you want to, that's the mindset that you want to have. And I would play Pam in Siege or Solo Showdown. With Barley, I would play him mostly in Siege, but some of it on Heist. Your super does a lot of damage to the enemy Ike in Siege, so you can actually throw your super at the enemy Ike without taking any damage, and then that will deal a lot of damage and really help you guys win, and apply that pressure that will help you win. And for Heist, I would try to get your super in between the safe and you, so that way any enemies walking to you will take damage, which will get you another super. I would play him in solo showdown mostly. I'm not very good with Leon in other modes personally, and my biggest tip for him would be try to just shoot some long range shots to try to just get your super, and then use your super to sneak up on people. But I find that his super is so good for healing that if you want to beat an El Primo up close, I would shoot 3 shots at him, then right away use my super for that healing while I get a few more shots saved up, then shoot them again, because you will be able to last longer with that super going. So even though you don't want to use it for invisibility in some scenarios, use it just for the healing. Now I would play Brock in either Heist or Siege, and my biggest tip for him would be use the fire and try to block the enemy path with fire, and that'll really help you deal damage, and it will do a lot more damage to the enemy Ike and the Heist safe. But you really want to block the enemy path with that fire, even though it's so little damage, but it'll stop healing, and it'll give your enemies more of a knowledge where they're going to go, so they can hit their shots easier as well. You play them in Brawl Ball, and you really want to line up the enemies so that way you can hit 2 with your super, and don't always go for trick shots. It's not worth it. Why would you waste so much time playing if you're just going to lose because you're just trying to trick shot everything? Poco, he's pretty adjustable to any mode, but I would really, again, play him in probably Gem Grab, and I would not use his damage star power, but I would use his healing star power, so that way you can really heal up your teammates to grab those gems and get back safely. I would play Shelly in a few different modes, but especially Brawl Ball, with that ability to shoot the ball at the net and then use your super to stun the enemies, so that way the ball goes through them. That's a lot of fun, but it does take some practice. And you also counter Poco Double Tank, which isn't a huge meta, but it is, you will see it a few times, and Shelly's really good against that. I would play Ems in probably Brawl Ball, with that gadget being able to punch the ball out of the enemy hands. That can save you a lot of goals, and either star power works. Like, I really like them both, but you can also play Ems in modes like Hot Zone. I would play BB in mostly Brawl Ball again, maybe some other modes if there's a lot of cover for you to hide behind. And my biggest tip for her would be use your BB bubble to hit multiple enemies. That will charge your super way faster, and it will help you a lot overall. Now my biggest tip for Dynamite would probably be, if you want to get really good at him, practice in the training range for like 5 minutes every day, practicing your double jump and triple jump, and then don't practice it hard in the real game, because that will make you lose a lot. But once you get the hang of it, of double jump and triple jump, then start going into some game modes like gem grab, then trying out double jump and triple jump. Then you will find yourself winning a lot more games. I would play Piper mostly in Bounty, and my biggest tip for her would be shoot your shots a tiny bit to where the enemy's walking, and then shoot behind your other shot, because that will almost guarantee to get a hit in the enemy, and I find that helps me a lot to get my shots in. And then your third shot, you kind of get the hang of the third shot after, which will certify your victory. I would play him in Bounty or Solo Showdown, and my biggest tip for him would be make sure that when you use Peep, your body will be safe, because if it's not, you will lose your super and you will make the enemies come a lot closer to winning, which is a lose-lose for you. So why would you take it? My biggest tip for Crow would be in Solo Showdown, make sure that you have your shield star power, because I find that really saves your life multiple times, because he's pretty squishy, and yeah, you really want to damage the enemy over time, and then with your super, you can jump in, shield up, and take the victory. Before you actually play, memorize the map, make like little X's of where your turret would go and what it could reach, so that way you know where to place it, and you can base your game off of your turret, because that's what pennies should be doing. Because if you don't know where to place your penny turret before the match starts, it'll either distract you from the match, which will make you worse, or you'll get a worse placement, which will make you way worse. In Heist, try to get your turret on the enemies safe, which will make them either run back or just lose. But you don't want to you don't want to place your turret in a place where it'll just die instantly. So you want to kind of put it behind a wall and on the enemy safe if possible. Although that's sometimes hard to do, especially if there's enemies defending. Now last on my list is Lou, my worst brawler by far. I would play him in Siege, and you really want to use your super to make the enemy siege bot stop and hit a wall and just freeze there. And you want to typically shoot 2 shots on him, like this, while your super is down. You want to shoot 2 shots, then wait till he fully thaws, then shoot another 2, then wait till he fully thaws, because that way you shoot the least amount of ammo to get the most amount of freeze time. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you guys comment below how many of these tips actually helped. And I know that a few of them are wrong because I'm not a professional. I don't spend all my life studying the game. So please comment below any mistakes that you think I made, or some tips that are better than mine, because I would love that, so that way my next video of this will be greatly improved and I can make a more detailed video. Anyway, I really appreciate it, and it really helps the channel. Please subscribe and have a great day, because you guys deserve it.